Hi, and hello, welcome again to this webinar on Ask Data. My name's Sophie Sparks. I'm the Community Manager at the Information Lab, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm based in London, so for me, I hope you're having a good afternoon. And depending on where in the world you're dialing in from, I hope you're having a good morning or a good evening as well. I'm going to introduce our fantastic host for today, Ravi Minstry, who's going to be running this webinar on Ask Data. Ask Data is one of Tableau's brilliant new features in its 2019.1 release. Ravi will be telling you a little bit more about it. He's one of our brilliant consultants here at the Information Lab and also a Tableau ambassador. This webinar will run for about half an hour. And if you have any questions, please do type them into the chat box or the Q&A box, and myself or Ravi will be able to get back to you. At the end of the webinar, we'll give you a little bit more time to ask any other questions you have. And we'll also let you know if you've missed any parts of this webinar, or if you'd like to get more information about Ask Data or about how we can help you with it. We'll give you some ways we can do that then as well. So without further ado, I'm going to put myself on mute, hand over to Ravi, and if you have any questions, I'll be there in the chat box or the Q&A box for you.
Thanks, Sophie. Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well on this Monday. So I'm going to talk about Ask Data. So this is a new feature that was released in Tableau 2019.1 last week. And it's been in beta and it's been spoken about for a while now. So alongside the new data prep management tool, so Prep Conductor, one of the big new release features in this new release is Ask Data. So what is Ask Data? It's a natural language capability that Tableau have implemented into their Tableau server offering. And what it fundamentally does is it looks at, allows you to ask questions through speech and typing things in. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do today. So the story of Ask Data really begins a couple of years ago, actually, when Tableau acquired ClearGraph. Some of you may have known about this, but Tableau acquired ClearGraph, which was basically the foundation to what Ask Data was built upon. So this is helping you understand and ask questions of your data through natural language. And then on top of this, Tableau built and integrated into its platform. And it's something really quite interesting. It's a feature that's used on Tableau Server and Tableau Online. So if you have either one of these products or access to one of these products, it should be available on the newest release, 2019.1. And without further ado, let's just hop into it and get started. I'm just going to quickly log into my Tableau server here and choose the site I'm going to hop into. Now, immediately you might notice something different. So this is the new mixed content view within Tableau Server. So if you're a veteran of Tableau Server, you might notice that it was a slightly different view when you logged in. And what Tableau have done here is started off with this projects view. But if I click on this open data, you'll notice that I have both workbooks and data sources in the same view now. Now, the one I want to focus in on is this land registry data set to begin with. As you can see, when I hover over this data set, I'm giving a brief introduction into and description into how it's connected to the owner of the data source and a brief description. If I've actually got this connected to a Prep Conductor workflow, the Prep Conductor flow will also be appeared here as well. So immediately when I click into this data source, Ask Data is the first thing that pops into the view now. And this is one of the biggest changes to Tableau Server. Because previously when you clicked onto a data source, you'd be able to see the connections, refreshes, and workbooks. But now immediately you're greeted with this view. So on the left-hand side, we have this panel, which is looking at the different dimensions and measures in the data source. For those of us that use Tableau Desktop, this might seem familiar, as it's very similar to the look and feel that we would see in desktop, but without all of the canvas in the center here. So the section to put filters, the details shelf and the marks card, and the columns and rows shelf. What is also different is this analysis complete. And what's interesting here is what Tableau is doing is in the background is analyzing the data source so that it helps you understand what the metadata is behind it. And also once I start hovering over these categories, it gives me some further information about what's inside the data source. So again, these visual cues help me quickly get a whole understanding of what the data is that I'm looking at, and also understand that what kind of data that it could be. I mentioned earlier we've got a brief description. And if I click on read more here, you'll see that a curator would be able to actually amend this. So they'll be able to add a description about the data source, the project it sits in, the owner, tags, and also ask data. You'll notice that I can actually trigger whether ask data is enabled for a data source or not. Now, my role on this Tableau server is a server administrator, so it differs depending on what role you have. But if you are an administrator, you can actually set whether you want ask data to be available on a data source or not. And then secondly, this data source analysis section is what drives this analysis complete section over here. So you can say whether you want that analysis to happen automatically, whether you want it to be triggered by a user login like myself, or whether you want it disabled completely, so it's not refreshing as often. This really depends on the data source, and there's some further documentation about this feature within the Tableau documentation, which we'll look at a bit later. So let's get into it. So this is a data source looking at the land registry price paid. So this is every single property sold in the UK over time. Now, I can see that the date of transfer is between the 4th of January 1995 to the 30th of November 2018. But I want to see the price paid over time. So if I scroll down, I can see that there's a price section over here. So let's start typing. So I want to see the price over time. Oops, sorry, I want to see the median price over time. So if I now press enter, I'll click on this view. You'll notice that Ask Data actually opens up a new tab, and immediately I can see the median price over time. And similar to any sort of Tableau server view, Tableau view we have, we can hover over the chart to get an understanding what's underneath this data. Now I see here I've got a property type in here, so I can see the terraced, semi-detached, detached, etc. So maybe I want to split this by property type. So I want to type in by property type over here. And Tableau understands what I want to do and immediately brings it onto color, as we would see on a Tableau desktop view. Now, some of you might be watching this thinking, hang on, I can do this in Tableau desktop. Why would I use Ask Data for this? But really, it's not specifically for those users who understand and are comfortable using Tableau desktop, but more for the users that might be slightly intimidated by Tableau desktop, but want to actually understand and explore their data anyway. So I can hover over here and I can see there's a spike in other. And maybe I want to look at this in a more detailed view, not over year, but by month. So I can click on this section of this pill over here and click on it to get this different view. So you can see I can choose different dimensions here, and also actually even filter further for different types of dimensions or measures. So I can say maybe I want to focus on the geographic marks types, or the date types, or the text types. Now on this section I actually want to just change the aggregation. So I wanted to drill down and show my median price by a month level. So let's click that and accept the changes. Okay, so this is actually a bit more busy. It's a bit harder for me to tell a story and actually understand what's going on here. Now this other section, I believe, is looking at like large properties, so thinking buildings, things like this. So it might not be indicative to use this when I'm looking for a house. So I can actually just right click on the filter over here, the legend, and exclude that view and get understanding. Now terraced, you can see there's 3.1 million terraced houses. Skewing my data again, maybe to just investigate the 3 detached flat maisonette and semi-detached views, I want to just exclude that section. So exclude that here. But again, it's fairly busy, so I want to go back to my year view. Now you'll notice that it actually didn't persist the changes I made to property type. So this is one of the small kinks that will probably be ironed out in the later versions of Ask Data. It's not quite, it's getting to, it's at the stage where it's ready to be used, but there are small kinks that once Tableau understand how the users are using it, they can start ironing out. For example, persisting filters, or as you'll see a bit later, some of the different ways to save and interact with it when you want to dig deeper into your analysis. So I personally am looking for a house. So I want to firstly understand what the median price of a property is where I live in Suffolk. So I want to do median price, but by county. And actually, I can select county, but really I want to focus in on Suffolk as a county. So when we select this view, Ask data goes away and makes the request to the Tableau server, and we're given a map. So I'm given the median price per county, but really I want to focus in on Suffolk. So median price in the data set is 230,000 in Suffolk. Now you'll notice that I'm able to type in the county name Suffolk, and it immediately pops up with a number. And even though I haven't told to ask data, look in the county field for the value Suffolk. Again, this comes back to this analysis and metadata and scanning it does. So you can see when I'm looking at county, you've got all the different counties broken down, and Tableau is now looking and scanning over this data source and seeing what are the common values and actually indexing all of these different things. So when you ask it a question, it's ready to answer that question in detail. So perhaps I want to see in Suffolk, but by town or city. Median price of the county in Suffolk by town or city. So it's going to filter to Suffolk and show me the median price of all the properties in Suffolk, but on a map. I can hover over here, say Bungay, Beccles, Thetford, or where I live in Ipswich. Now I'm looking to move, so I'm looking at properties in Chelmsford, for example. So how do I quickly search for that? So I can, again, click on the county view and start selecting the counties I want to include. So in this case, I want to include Essex. And press OK. And again, I'm given a breakdown of the different counties in Essex. Now, you can see here, I've got some data issues here. So Sudbury in Essex is not up north. It's probably around here somewhere. So perhaps it's someone to go back to the DBA or the owner of this data source. In this case, I believe it's Ben Moss. So going back to him and saying, hey, this thing seems a bit off. Can you investigate the data a bit further? So I'm interested in seeing this, but I know that that Essex is it can be a quite expensive area. So let me filter this down further and say I want to focus in Chelmsford, but filter to town city Chelmsford. That's what I want to do, and I want to see over time and how the property prices have changed in Chelmsford. Okay, so they're dipping down, so it might be a good time to buy, but I'm really interested in buying a flat. Now I can go over to my left-hand panel, find the property type. So in this data set, it's flat maisonette. So I want to say for flats, I can never spell maisonette correctly, so it's not even S, maisonette. Or let's say by maisonette. I misspelled this here. Maisonette. There we go, my bad. There we go. So you can see that there's 71 properties sold, and maybe this is where I want to filter down and change the aggregation to month to get a better view. Okay, so maybe it is a good time to buy a flat or maisonette in Chelmsford. But I want to focus in and see where these are by postcode on a map. Oops. I exclude that. And select that by postcode and see if Tableau can change it. I'm going to change this to a map view instead of a line chart. And let's remove the date filter. Okay. And we can zoom in, similar to how we can do in Tableau, zoom into this view further and further in depth. Now, one of the things I want to look at is, say, for example, I'm looking for flat/maisonette. In Essex, but I want the median or where the price is less than 250,000. And then we've got 403 records, but I want to see these in a bar chart and see where they are and break this down by the town or city. So I want to bring this down by town or city. So you can see where I can actually afford. So Colchester is a good bet for me. Chelmsford, Basildon, those sorts of areas. Now, in this sort of way, we can start seeing how Tableau, we can use Ask Data to start asking and answering questions on the fly. Now, if I want to start taking this and start building a dashboard, I can click on this Save button and Save As. I can't immediately hop into a web edit session yet. Now, this is one of the pain points I was mentioning earlier. But if I wanted to create a view here, save it into this open data section and say, this is my property analysis workbook, and I want to embed the password for the data source and save it, it's now going to save this workbook for me, and then I can go into it and do some web editing if I want to, or share it with other people in my other colleagues in my organization with this link. Now, Ask Data is also a way to start thinking about how you're curating your data sources. So I'm going to hop into the Tableau online site I have and into this project here, where I've added a data source for my Tableau server repository. Now, I know this data source is rich, and it's also very well documented. So, for example, it's got comments in, it's got different calculated fields. So you'll notice when I start hovering over this after Ask Data has done its meta-analysis, it gives me a description and a formula. So I can quickly get an understanding of what's inside my data source, and also what each one of these what each one of these dimensions or measures is part of. So, for example, if I scroll down to access count, I can see what it means and how it's been calculated. Now, let me move that to the end. Now, one of the things Tableau has done in their help documents in order to help people understand Ask Data is for desktop users, sorry, online users, help them understand how to start using it, but also how to optimize your data for Ask Data, because this is really important, because this is how you can start driving data governance and start linking together the different parts of the data stream, as it were. So looking at curated data sources to be the single source of truth, but then also curating them so that anyone that's picking them up can understand them at a glance, to start saying, okay, so when I want to build a certain view or slice my data in a certain way, I can use these different fields. It really helps to build that analysis. And for me, it was really going to drive what Tableau's got cooking next, which is the data management platform. So this is coming in the betas. You may have noticed it was released as part of, alongside the Prep Conductor. But Tableau having a data management resource that allows you to understand which data sources are being used. Now, with this metadata layer, you're actually able to start looking at the most popular pills in a worksheet, the most common values, and also things like the role of the dimension or the type and the column name from the data source. Now, if you're interested in learning more about how Tableau's come together with this natural language processing, there's actually a white paper that Tableau released to talk about how they actually created this. So a blog about how they expect people to start using Ask Data, but also how they started using natural language to help understand that. So, for example, bringing in things like the top 10, or show me something between, or what's something over time, to help understand how people are going to ask those questions. And I can only imagine that Tableau is going to get more and more intelligent when it comes together with pulling more intelligent queries to Ask Data. Now, I also envisage a time where you'll start having conversations with Ask Data. We'll say, show me the access count over time. Okay, how does this look for this one? And you start building that analysis as if you're interrogating the data, how perhaps a desktop user might do with dragging and dropping, the Tableau shuffle. But instead of having to have that knowledge on how to, and that confidence to actually drag and drop, you're able to ask and answer those questions with just speech, which is natural to people. And for me, the biggest thing that Ask Data does, it lowers that barrier to entry even further. Some people may talk about it as fairly gimmicky or a buzzword or something where it's just meeting a market demand. But for me, it's allowing more and more people to have access and building that data literacy. This is a buzzword we hear a lot this year, the data literacy and people's understanding of data. And just to finish off now, if you're interested in playing with Ask Data but don't have the latest and greatest version of Tableau installed, you can actually play around with it on the Tableau website. So if you go to tableau.com's new features Ask Data, you can check out the interactive demo, and what it will do is take you to a Tableau online site that Tableau have got outward facing as a showcase. I believe it's going to be open for a couple of weeks now. But this is a way for you to sort of have a go yourself. There's some quite interesting data sources in here. The Superstore one we know and love, some wine data sets, Airbnb, sports salaries, just help us start to understand how this could help drive your organization. And that's all from me. If you have any questions, I think we've got about 5 or 10 minutes before the end of this webinar. So yeah, do let me know if you have any questions now. Is there anything in the Q&A, Sophie? Oh, we have a chat here. Let me just quickly open that up. Oops. Can you turn the feature on and off server-wide? Good question. Let's find out. I've not actually double-checked that. So let's see. If I go to my settings, I don't think you can, from what I understand. I think it has to be on a data source by data source level. But if I check on the settings on this particular site, conductor, comments, alerts. No, it doesn't seem like you can. Let me just check on the overall settings. Yeah, I don't believe you can, actually. That's a very good question. I think it has to be disabled on a data source by data source level, which might be a pain. But I think it's something that it's fairly, I'm intrigued to understand the impact on the server. So we're looking at, I've had a look at the Logshark outputs for those of you server admins out there, and it's using a new process called the Elastic process. And it comes up as use data source. So I don't think it's too load intensive, but I think it's a good question to investigate further. But yeah, I think for now at least, it's a data source by data source view.
Ravi, we have a question from Steve. He wants to know, is there any plan to integrate this with voice commands, for example, from Alexa?
Excellent. Great question. This is the stuff that everyone wants to hear about, right? So I think there might be plans in the future. So currently the closest we've got to it, I think you can find something done by another Tableau partner called Star Schema. So there was a hackathon last year, I believe, and they were able to integrate Alexa into Tableau. So if I quickly do a Google, excuse me. So yeah, there's a couple of cool data sources, videos here, where people have done that sort of thing. It's probably possible, yeah. I don't think there's any plans for Tableau to do it natively, but absolutely something that could be coming. And I think it's possible using the APIs that already exist. But personally, I'm not 100% sure, but I can imagine it's something on the way.
Thanks for that, Ravi. We also have a question through from Eddie, who wants to know, will this ever be part of Tableau Public, as they don't currently have server or desktop, but they do know that Tableau Public runs on a Tableau server instance?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't think there's any plans yet, but that's something definitely to put forward to the Tableau Public team. I think that'd be a really cool little instance, for people to start, interrogating open data sets that Tableau curates. I know that there are some really cool updates to Tableau Public coming in the future, which I'd definitely keep your eyes out for. But I've not heard anything about integrating Ask Data, but that could be a cool little feature for sure. Something in the chat. Let me have a look. Integration to desktop product. No, I don't think it's going to come to a desktop product anytime soon. I think it's mainly going to be a server feature. Mainly because of the processing power on the back end. From my sort of guess, educated guess, as it were, I believe that's because of this metadata scanning that happens in the background. While I can understand that Ask Data could be used for the desktop, I feel like people that would have a desktop license are more likely to interrogate the data themselves. So this comes back to something I perhaps will mention before we finish, which is the Tableau licensing. So this is licensed as part of the new role-based pricing for explorers and creators. So viewers in this lower tier don't actually have access to Ask Data, but explorers will do, as will creators. But I think the thinking is that a creator with a desktop license is probably more likely to interrogate the data themselves using the desktop than integrating the last data. That said, I've had a lot of fun with it in the last couple of days to quickly find out something which I would have typically opened a web edit session for.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ravi. If anyone has any more questions, we've got another minute or two for you to type them in and for Ravi to be able to answer them for you. Just while people might be typing in their last questions, I'll let you guys know that we will be putting this recording of this webinar up online in the next day or so, and Ravi intends to write a summary and a blog post about Ask Data, and we'll be sending all the participants on this webinar out a link to the blog post and the recording of the webinar as well. So we'll also have some details there if you do have any other questions or you'd like to get in contact with us about this new feature or any other Tableau or Alteryx features that you might be interested in. We'll include a link for you to ask us those as well.
Cool. Yeah, just to finish off, if anyone has any further questions before we wrap up, I 100% implore all of you to have a go with the interactive demo that Tableau have online right now. It's a good way to sort of get a grip of thinking about how it could be useful for you, but also finding out some cool stuff from the data sources. I think a couple of colleagues have sort of had a play with this and said there's some tricks and nuances. But I definitely recommend feeding that back to Tableau directly. So sending an email to beta@tableau.com. I mean, they're always happy to get feedback from customers to help understand how they can improve the product and the small pain points people might find with it. So I definitely implore all of you that have joined, even the people watching on YouTube afterwards, have a play with the demo if it's still live, because it's a pretty cool feature, I think. But everyone have their different ways of approaching it and using it.
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone who joined this webinar. Look out for the links we'll be sending through. And both Ravi and I hope you have a lovely start to your week and hope you found this webinar really helpful. It's a great feature. And as Ravi said, please do test out the demo they have up online. And we're just on time, so we'll be calling it a day. It's great having everyone join, and we hope you will be able to join some of our other webinars in the future. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thank you very much.